All right, we're back. It is COMP305, Game Programming 1 here at Centennial. It's the fall 2016 semester, and it's week 11, part 1 of our broadcast. This first part, what we're going to be talking about, just make sure you can hear me. Yes, you can, is the final project I want to talk about right now. And I also want to talk about the final presentation for this course, which is taking the place of your exam. And so it is mandatory. Right? So it's not something that you can get out of and say, I don't want to present. I'm weak at presenting. I don't like presenting to people. Can I not do it? The answer is no, you have to do it. Okay? And it's good because it gives you a chance to challenge yourself a little bit. It hits those employability skills for presentation skills and communication and all that stuff. And if you're a game student, it's great for practicing your pitch, which is what we do a lot when it comes to game jams and even trying to sell our games to potential investors. Okay, let's get into it. So what is, let me just dumb down all this stuff I've been working on. What is these requirements that we are talking about? And we'll talk about this in 1 second when we go into our courses. Hi. And I'm going to go into our course material for today. Okay, so yeah, that's not it. So final project looks like this. So it's worth 30% of your final grade. So over the next 3 weeks, it's an accumulation of the stuff we've been doing for pretty much all semester, right? That's what the final project's all about. And there's really 2 big parts to it. One of the big parts is, and you know, please fill out the survey that comes around. There's 2 big parts to it. One big part is the actual project itself, and the other part is the final presentation. Okay, so together, the final presentation takes place of the final exam. There is no final exam in this course; it's just a final presentation. However, there is some prep involved, right? And we'll talk about that. So the final presentation is worth 20, and the final project's worth 30. That's like 50% of your mark. Why? Someone's like, well, Tom, 50% of my marks in the last 3 weeks of the course. Yeah, no, because you have a lot of the stuff you need for your project already. And we'll talk about that right now. So part 1, which is due next week, for you and up to 2 other people. If you make a case for 3 people, I will accept. So you can do as many as 4 in one group, right? If you make the right case for it. And I'll tell you why, okay? But I don't recommend that you make a group of 1. For this project, right? It's killer. I mean, there's too much to do. There's not enough time. There's 3 weeks. It's the end of the semester. And there's just no time for you to be alone. So please don't do that. Combine with somebody else or a couple somebodies, right? And again, and if you make a case for it, I will accept up to 4, and I'll tell you why. So let's suppose next week you got this first part, which is your game concept and your first working level. Remember what I talked about before. Your first working level can be an offshoot of assignment 1, assignment 2, and assignment 3. One of those assignments, and let's say, for example, you 2 guys are together, you're working together, right? And we like your assignment 1 because it's awesome, right? Let's just say. And he wants to join you to make your final project to do assignment 1. He can add a level, and maybe another guy, maybe I'm there with you, right? And I want to do level 3, and he's going to do level 2, and you've got your level 1 already. But we need a couple of other things. I need an updated external document that says, hey, here's my new concept. My concept is going to be a 3-level game with a start screen and an end screen. And in my game, this is what the game is about. This is the backstory, all this kind of stuff. Your game design document needs to be updated to reflect a 3-level game, not a 1-level game. Each level should be approximately 5 minutes for a total of 15 minutes for the whole game itself, just from a scope perspective, okay? Now that means me fooling around and trying to get through the game in about 15 minutes, like without, you know, sight unseen. It doesn't mean that the whole game perfectly executed is 15 minutes. That would be too long, right? Because that means like you'd have to be perfect at the game to get 15 minutes. No, it's too long. 5 minutes with mistakes, okay? That's what it means, approximately. And again, so next week is do your first draft of your game design document, this external document, and your menu scene, which says, hey, you have your start the game, let me look at my instructions, or exit the game. Now, some people may choose not to put their instructions as part of the menu, but they want to do cutscenes. So some people like that more. So you go from level 1, you do your level 1, and you might, before you get to level 1, there's a bit of a cutscene that says, here are the instructions what you need to do for level 1. Because each level should have its own goal. Like, what do you do in that level? What's the main thing you want to do there? And it should be progressively more difficult, right? Like, you don't want to make the exact same stuff on one level, level 2, and level 3. If it's the same boring stuff, it's not really the different levels. It's just the same level that's just gotten longer, right? So you want to make it so that each level looks different. Each level there's a slightly different mechanic, you know, something else you have to conquer or something else to do, right? And then it has at the end a different goal, right? Something you have to get to. Maybe the first level you have to get to a specific door by jumping over a fiery pit. I'm making this up. But let's say the second level, you can't just jump over the fiery pit. You have to use some kind of crossbow, to kind of swing over the fiery pit, something else like that, and also climb up these fiery stairs. I don't know. But the idea is at the end you also have to kind of have it so that level 2 you get a new mechanic or something else you have to do. Right? Same thing with level 3. So the first part is really figuring out what your mechanics are going to be for each of the levels, what your goals are going to be for each of the levels. Get your scoring system working. For the first level, you may have to rejig, like the guy who you're going to use, or the partner that you're going to use as the main, kickoff point. Let's say, for example, I want to do a 3D game, right? And my 3D game, I like your 3D game the most, right? So you and I are going to join forces. I'm going to use your 3D game, but I still may have to rejig your 3D game because the way you get points and everything else and go through the game may not be the game we want at the end. We might use your level, we might use your ideas, but we're going to expand them. We're going to go forward and make something new. So the first part of your final project, again, which is worth 30%, which the next week is worth 10%. You have to hand it in. Now, I'm going to tell you this. There are no extensions going forward. So every Monday for the next 3 weeks, right, you're going to be delivering a part of your game, okay, of your final game. Please, please, I'm asking you nicely, do not do this alone. This is deadly to do it alone. I'll say it again at this point. Okay, part 2. So this is due Monday, December the 5th. So this weekend, like a week from now, on Saturday, we'll get together. I'll check you, see where you're at, right? Check an X. And then on the Monday is the first part that's due, okay? Part 2, your second and third levels, and they're fully working, should be due the following week. That's how tight our timelines are right now, right? Now this is like, I have an idea for how the first level works. Well, we want to make it to the second and third levels. How can this work? Well, that's why you have 3 people. There should be one person that's working on level 2 and another person that's working on level 3 at the same time. It's another scene. And don't make the scenes collide. Make it so that every scene is a different level. You can always use the exact same project, or even make another project and import that scene. Remember, you can export and import? I can import that entire scene into my project. So get your partners to work on their scenes, on their levels, and make sure that the person who made the first game can oversee the other 2 people and say, yeah, okay, it's kind of in the same vein. Yes, you're right. We're going down the right path. Because if they make totally different levels that has nothing to do with yours, that's not really a great game, okay? Also, please be informed that you cannot use, if you're making a 3D game or 2D game or scroller or whatever, you can't use each person's like level 1 and make it 3 levels. Okay, I won't accept that. So example, I don't know, trying to think of me and Ash. We're working together, and I love her level 1, and I got my level 1. And you know what? You have your level 1, right? So the 3 of us, I take your level 1, my level 1, and her level 1, and we make a 3-level game. No. There's nothing to do, right? That doesn't make any sense. And besides, our game might be totally different. Even though if it's a 3D game, our 3D games may not mesh at all, right? So the smarter thing to do is say, I like Ash's game, I like her style, I'm going to use her assets, and we're going to add other assets that go along with her style, right? And I'm going to make a whole new level 2 and a whole new level 3. That's what I'm asking you to do. Please do not make or modify an other partner's level 2 and level 3 and add them in. It will not suffice for this game. Okay, it will not meet requirements. So that's due 2 new working levels with the same, pretty much the same mechanics with a little bit extra stuff would be probably involved for part 2. Okay. Part 3 is your finished product, right, which is due the last Monday. For you, it's past the last Monday of semester because our semester officially ends the 17th, the Saturday the 17th. Friday the 16th for most other classes, but for our class, because we're on a Saturday, it's the 17th that it ends. So I got to give you just a couple of days leeway sometimes because, you know, by the time we get in and you do your presentation and you might get some feedback, some tweaks, I'm going to give you until the Monday to hand it in. It's a drop dead deadline. That means if you don't do it on the Monday, I'm going to close it up at that time because I need to mark everything, and it's all going to be submitted that week. So the week of the 19th, which is the last week before Christmas, because that is Christmas week, I got to do all my marking too. So Merry Christmas to Tom, right? If I don't do it by by Wednesday, 19th, 20th, 21st, all my marks have to be in. But there's no extensions, please. Which means you guys got to be very diligent in getting everything done. So I can get all the marking in on time so you guys can get your marks at the end of the semester and there's no issues. All right? Please pick partners you're going to work with. There are no opportunities at this step to switch partners around because especially for games, it's different than it is for other applications for part 2 or part 3. Whoever you've chosen to work with on part 1, you stay with on part 2 and part 3 for this one. Okay? And for your final project. If you find yourself not willing to work with anybody, it's on you, baby, right? Which means that means you're not going to have anything. And this is worth 50% of your mark. It means it could be a pass or fail at this point. Up until now, you've done stuff that is like, pretty good. And remember, from a marking perspective, I'm going to be light on marks because it's an intro course in terms of, everything you've done. So if you've handed everything in, by the way, I've opened, for those people who haven't handed anything in, I've opened up assignment 1, assignment 2, and assignment 3, right? So you can hand something in, even if it's to get part marks. If you haven't handed something in, I will accept them. I'm putting an amnesty on stuff that's old. Hand it in. Worst case scenario, I'm going to give you some part marks. You're not going to get 0, okay, if you didn't hand something in. Those are the people that are online as well. So if they're open right now, I've opened it up. You won't get full marks, 100%. You're not going to get full marks if you haven't handed it in for 30 days, right? Or 100 days, however, how long it's been now, right? But I will give you part marks because you're making an effort to hand something in, as long as it's working, if it's reasonable. If you just hand me in an empty project, you're going to get 0, right? So don't do that. That's like, don't just hand in something, right? Hand in something that you want to do if you have time. Or if you were late and you couldn't hand it in before, hand it in and I'll give you some marks. So that's what this thing is. So for the next 3 weeks, you're putting together your game. Each week we get together, this week included. I'll give you a little bit of time to work together this week. Next week, week 12, is more of a workshop week and less of a teaching week. Please do not miss next week. I know you guys I want to work from home, or I want to work away from class. I don't want to work on a Saturday or whatever. It's a time that you can get together with your partners and do a little bit of work in class that I can supervise you, can help you out, get you over any kind of issues or problems or that you can't resolve on your own. Together, we can do this. If you go and do it on your own at home or whatever, and you're the kind of person who likes to work remote, I can't help you. I mean, I can't do some in-class help or whatever. So please come in next week, even though it's part of it will be a workshop week. All right. I'm also going to check your progress. For example, you and your partners get together, and you're going down the wrong road. I don't know. You've chosen something. I don't know. I've chosen Winnell's project. So let's say his project. Me and him are working together. But instead of doing what he did for level 3, which is, or for his 3D game, which is like that kind of like almost like a horror, I don't know, mystery game or whatever that you made, right? Instead of doing that, right, we're going down a dark road. Now we're making it into a sci-fi game, right? That's a whole hell of a lot of changes, right? And why would I take his game and then totally change it up and make it something totally different? Now, what about for those people who don't want to base it off of assignment 1 or assignment 2 or assignment 3? Will I allow you to make a completely different game that has nothing to do with assignment 1, 2, or 3? The answer is yes, if you really want to. But you have to have a rock solid team, a really cool concept, and next week, remember, your first level has to be rocking and ready, right? That's really hard to do in a week, like super hard. Even if you have 3, 4 people working on it, it's got to be the timing, and plus you have all other kinds of projects and assignments happening right now, right? So I don't see how that's possible, right? And I don't recommend it. But if you really want to, I don't want to take away your creativity. So, please come by me. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to work on assignment, kind of an offshoot of assignment 1, 2, or 3 for your final project, please talk to me about it next week, right? I'll give you a week to talk about it, and I want you to come talk to me in person. No Slack messages about your final project, okay? Come talk to me. Let's have a conversation, right? Or you at least give me a call on the phone, something. We can have a conversation, because it's going to take a back and forth conversation if you're going to try and do something completely different. In fact, even for your part 1, I want to see it next week. Bring it in. Tell me what you're doing. Who is your partners, right? Sit together if you can. You can partner with people in different sections. I'm okay with that, all right? Because it's one big section anyway for me. I just want you to make sure that everything is good, because this is, 30% for this plus 20% for your presentations, 50% of your final mark, and this would be very bad, all right, if something bad happened at this point. Okay, so that's what the deliverables are over the next 3 weeks, right? Not including the presentation. So what are you doing? So either alone or as a team of up to 3. The reason why I'm saying up to 3 is because maybe you and 2 other partners are making level 1, level 2, level 3. Yeah, but I can almost see, like I said, a case for 4. And I'll tell you why. There's a final presentation that's also going to be taking the place of your final exam, right? And the final presentation is going to look like this. All right, so here's your final presentation. It's worth 20% of your grade. Again, there is no way to get out of this, all right? Everyone has to be part of the final presentation. But that's why I'm asking you to join forces with other people, because it's going to be presentation day on that Saturday. It's due on the Saturday. But your final project is due on the Monday, which is on the 19th. 2 days later, right, is when your final project is due. Why? You get some feedback from me from the presentation. It doesn't have to be fully complete. There might be some other many parts that aren't working 100%. You have a couple more days to patch things up and put it together and give your final submission or your final release, for the Monday. That's why we're doing it this way. So you get feedback on the Saturday from us and from the class, any kind of questions, and we move on to getting things done for the Monday. So your final presentation, what is it? There's 2 parts to it. One is a PowerPoint slide deck you have to put together, right? I will accept PowerPoint. I will accept any other kind of slide deck, like, for example, some kind of Google Slides or whatever. I'm okay with those 2, right? But it's got to be something that I can read and that you can hand in, okay, number 1. Second part is I want you to screencast with your partners, right, your presentation. So there's 2 parts. 10% is for the slide deck and your presentation in class, and 10% is for the presentation that you're going to save and put up on YouTube. How do you do that? Exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm broadcasting live on YouTube. You're going to do a little YouTube thing with you and your partners, and what you're going to do is you're going to record yourself and your voice with your partners, and you're going to follow the same slide deck. It's a good practice for you before you come into class. Your presentation that you're going to be doing, the screencast that you're going to be doing, is due the moment you walk into class on the Saturday of the 17th, okay? So please don't try and do your screencast after you're done. And please don't screencast when you're here, okay? That would be very bad too, because bad things can happen to that. So screencast from home or screencast from another place. You need to get together with your partners to kind of, it takes 10 minutes. That's all I want you to do. So what am I looking for the screencast? And again, you can put it up on YouTube, Vimeo, Twitch, somewhere that I can see it live, okay? So your screencast is going to be organized into slides, right? So the first slide, right, is important because you and your partners are going to get up and say, "Hi, my name is Tom, and these are my partners, Rick and John." I'm just making this up, right? And Rick and John, okay, I'll make some real names. Ali and Ash, right? We're partners here in a project, and our team name is, Team, Star Studios. I don't know, right? Making it up. So Team Star Studios, we're going to do this. We made this game, and the name of the game is Mazescape. Take a look at my game online. Go ahead, go look at mazescape.ca, please. Seriously, go ahead. So this is the game that me and Ali and Ash just made, right? Right? And if you look at mazescape.ca, I'm serious. If you look at mazescape.ca, we didn't really make it, but this is what you would do. It looks like this, right? So I kind of put together this game with a couple partners of mine over about a day worth of work, right? It took us about a day's worth of work. Not great, but it's kind of a prototype that we put together for the first level, right? Now it's a web-based game, and by chance it looks very similar to what you've seen before, right? right? So that's the kind of game that it looks like. Now you can. I recommend you go into full screen mode for this one. Oh, and I can't get into it from here because I'm also broadcasting. But go, if you take a look at Mayscape.ca, you can do it even from home. I recommend going to full screen mode and checking it out. So okay, so this is where my game is as an example, and what is my game about? So if I go back to the presentation, so we kind of introduce ourselves. We do an overview slide of what the game is about, right? Summarize what your game is about. What kind of game are you making? Is it an adventure game? Please, I'm going to ask in advance, do not make a role-playing game, okay? If you try and make a role-playing game over the next 3 weeks, and I know some people are very enthusiastic, I think it's crazy, all right? You'll never finish. You'll say, Tom, I got this fantastic level 1 of my role-playing game. And I'm going to say, where's level 2 and where's level 3? That means you've lost 2/3 of your mark for the project. That's crazy. Please don't do that. I don't care how good your level 1 is, right? You need to finish off level 2 and level 3, okay? By the way, that Mayscape game is some of the mechanics that I put in there. Press tab, by the way. If you press tab, it'll give you your position. If you hold tab down, it'll tell you where you are. So I made this with a couple of partners of mine. Like I said, I reserved the domain. Now, the only way that I could do Mayscape.ca and use Microsoft Azure is to actually have a paid account. They do not allow a student account to be created, and so this one I'm actually paying for, right, to show you this thing. So Mayscape.ca actually points to a Microsoft Azure account that you can go to and and we can look at that later on. Okay, so going back to this, right? You've got your overview slide, then you get your planning slide. Your planning slide is basically, okay, so this is my sketches. Here are my wireframes for what my level is going to look like in my prototype, right, as an example. And so here's my planning slide. This is what I planned. Here's some screenshots of what the actual game looks like. So planned versus actual. I want you to show that in your slide, right? Your instruction slide is how you play the game. Do you use WASD, your controls, WASD? Are you using an Xbox controller? You can do that too with your with Unity games. You can set up an Xbox controller if you really want to, for PC or Mac even. What's the input for your game, right? Is it a mobile game you're making? Like, what kind of game are you creating? So that's really what the instruction slide's all about. Then demo your game for about a few minutes. Don't make it too crazy, and you should be able to see all the levels. If you have level 1, level 2, level 3. Make it easy for us to see it. Make it almost like there's a shortcut key. You press the 1 button, you're at level 1. Press the 2 button, you're at level 2. Press the 3 button, you're at level 3. So even you don't have to go through the entire level. Make it a cheat code. 2, bam, you're at level 2. Just takes you to that scene, right? Because otherwise, it'll be very hard for me to look at 3 levels of your game. We don't have time to look at 3 levels of everyone's game on presentation day. There's just no time, right? So make it easy for us to see it. And then we should see things like your instruction screen, your game over scene. Basically, this is what you would practice when you make your screencast. So in your screencast, make sure that you can see all these things. Like it says here, I want to see each of the games. Don't play it for 10 minutes. Play it for like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. And have somebody who knows how to play the game, please. Don't sit there and go like, so how do I play this again? I haven't played our game at all. I just made the levels, and I don't know how to play. I don't know how to win, right? You should be the expert at your game when you're demoing your game, right? If you're not the expert, give it to somebody else to play, right? Don't ask me to play on presentation day, okay? Because there's no time for me to figure out how to play your game. I'm interested in playing your game. I'm going to see it online, but I can't play it during that time. I know people ask me something. Hey, come on, sir, come over and play the. I don't have no time for that. Not because I don't want to, right? And besides, I don't know how to play your game, so I'm going to putz around and waste time in the class and there's a lot of people that are going to be here doing that. Okay, after you demo your game, you're going to be talking about lessons learned. Now, this is not really a slide that you would use in a pitch, like Dragon's Den, if you're going to try and get people to buy your game. This is for me. Tell me about what things went well for your in your project. Did you really work well with your partners? Did things not go so well? Did you have to work alone for a lot of it? As an example, did you have trouble with technology? Do you have trouble with one thing or another? What about things that you figured out? You wanted to do a really cool special effect, and you know what? You went and looked it up on Google or whatever and figured it out, and that's how you made that special effect. That was a kind of a really cool learning or an epiphany that you had, to take out of it. Talk about those things. Maybe you'll have it, maybe you won't. but everyone learned something from a project. So talk about what you've learned with you and your partner, all right? Finally, future possibilities. This is, again, a slide for me. It's not something that you put inside of a pitch, but you probably put something like this in a pitch if you said something like, well, my finished game would look like this. This is what the game's supposed to look like, right? That's what I want you to kind of think about in future possibilities. If you had more time, and if you were going to extend this game and keep working on the game so it's completed, and you were to put it up on Steam or a Play Store or someplace like that, right? What would it look like? If you had time, what would you want to do with it, right? So talk about those things too. Again, you don't spend a lot of time here. Each slide, if you spent a minute or two for each slide, you figure there's like 7 slides or 7 parts to this thing. The whole thing should probably take about 7 to 10 minutes, the whole presentation, including your demo, all right? And that's how long your screencast should be, 7 to 10 minutes. If it goes beyond 7 to 10 minutes, that means you haven't rehearsed it enough. And so it's a good practice for you before you come up and practice here on presentation day, that you have it ready to go. Also, if you're having trouble, if you really are somebody who has trouble presenting, write it out. Write what you're going to say, put it up on your phone, read it from your phone, read it from a paper, do something. But don't just stumble and ad-lib. Ad-libbing is the worst thing you can possibly do to try and figure out what you're going to say, right? Be prepared, because imagine that there might be some investors in the room that want to buy your game. That's what I want you to think about. By the way, I might bring in some guests here to view your game, people that are not part of our class, some other professors, perhaps, if they have chance on that last Saturday, because no one's doing classes. So it might be a chance for people to come in, to take a look at your game. If I can get them in here, I will. And they're going to ask you some questions about your game, so be prepared to answer your questions, right? Here's what would be really catastrophic. Your game is totally not ready. That's a failure on your exam. This is your exam, and it's tied into your project, right? That means you've got to get cracking. There is no time to fool around or extensions or anything like that. It's time for you and your partners to get going, get your stuff done, and your exam has to be done, right? Now, barring any kind of catastrophe that you need a doctor's note for, it's due on the Saturday. You have to come in and present, and you have to do your screencast. Worst case scenario, what if, and there's people that have to do this too, I don't know, for whatever reason, somebody has to travel. And I had somebody from the first section that said, well, I booked tickets. I didn't know that I had the 17th, and I already booked tickets to travel. You need to provide proof, number one, if you're traveling. And it has to be urgent. Like, why are you traveling unless, you know that there's exams happening during exam week. The advisory is don't travel. Don't book travel during exam week, right? Well, let's say you did. Or maybe it's something that you can't get out of because there's a sister that's getting married in the Bahamas or something like that, right? And I don't want to ruin your life. I mean, this is just one course, right? So you have partners. This is why you have partners, right? Somebody has to be here on presentation day to present your project. But you and your partners have to create your screencast. And that's why this thing is worth 20%, 10% for your screencast, and 10% for your final project, just in case something happens. What about also if we have enough groups, even though we have 8 hours to present, we can't get through everybody somehow. It's possible. By the way, it's happened to me, right? So what happens in that case? Well, I have your screencast, worst case scenario, right? It's also a backup. Someone gets sick that day, something happens, it can't be, the show must go on for you and your team. That's why the screencast is there, and that's why you have multiple partners. Again, for you to work on your own, you need to come in next week. I'm going to tell you this again. If you want to be a person who's going to work solo on your final project, you got to come in next week and justify that. That you can't find a partner, one person to work with is crazy for this final project. It's undoable. In real life, nobody works solo on games. Nobody. Nobody. Okay? They need an artist, they need a designer, they need a person to market, they need a person to do production. There's just, even in a small indie studio, there's 4, 5, 6 people probably at the minimum, right? So please don't come tell me that, yeah, I'm a single game developer and I make all my games on my own. Except for the guy who made Flappy Bird, I don't know anybody like that, all right? And he went crazy, that guy. He's like, I don't want to make any more games, right? So, any questions around final project and final presentation? Presentation taking the place of your exam, but it's required. They're contingent. One is contingent on the other. So you can't do your final presentation if you haven't worked on your stuff for the next 3 weeks. So next week, what's going to happen is when you come in, I'm going to check to see how you're doing. The week after that, I'm going to check to see how you're doing. So at least I know that you're going to be okay for final week. right? Over the next 3 weeks, I know we've been doing broadcasts, and some people haven't been showing up to class because they can watch things remotely. These next 3 weeks are critical, and I'm going to ask that everybody who can come in physically in class, because, or at least somehow communicate with me in a lot of detail about what's going on, right? I don't want a Slack message. I want a phone call. Worst case scenario, all right? Because we need to have a conversation. I have to understand what's going on with you guys. What are you planning to do for your final project? Again, it's not possible for you to work on your own. I'm telling you right now, it will be catastrophic. Details about this thing. Okay, so I want to come back to the presentation in a second. Let's talk about some more details about this. So again, your game is going to require a menu scene, and the menu scene will take you to play the game, have some instructions or exit. What if you're the kind of person that wants, like I said, to create cutscenes for your instructions for each level? That's okay. If you're someone who wants to, like, let's say before you go to level 1, here's the instructions for level 1. And then when you go to level 2, before level 2 there's another scene, here's the instructions for level 2. I'm okay with that too, if that's better for you and easier for you, right? Maybe it works for you better from a story perspective, right? That makes sense. But each instruction scene will display some kind of rules or goals for the level, right? You can do it all in one. And please don't just give me don't give me a wall of words, eh? Like a text wall is really bad, all right? Give me some pictures in your instruction screen, right? Give me some, like, if you're gonna, tell the player the controls for the game is WASD, make WASD an image, man, so I can see what the controls are. Make it so it's a little interesting. Don't make it boring, a wall of words. That's crazy, right? Text walls are really boring. Okay. Game scenes. Like I said, each game scene's got to be unique and have its own goal. The game over scene has to be there. So if you lose the game, some way of going to play again or exit to the menu, there's got to be some way of doing that. Player control of an avatar, vehicle, or character. It does not have to be a 3D game. Again, you can make a 2D game if you want to, either with assignment 1 or assignment 2 or assignment 3. You can kick off for one of those 3 different modes of play and create a game. And if you really want to, you can make your own, completely new. But like I said, next week you better show up and tell me what your plan is, right? Because that is insane to make a brand new game from nowhere. It'll make your final project, I would say honestly, about 30% harder. Okay, that would be insane. Computer control of enemies in AI. I've already shown you a couple of ways to do enemies in AI. In 2D, we use line casting, and in 3D, we used pathfinding, right, as well as move towards, right? Those are the 2 ways to do that. You can use those methods. Anything that I've shown you is fair game, all right? So you don't have to recode methods or redo things completely differently if you don't want to. I'm not asking you to go up online and figure out how to do A-star pathfinding or anything crazy. These are enough for what I've asked you to do, okay? But make it so that they're not too easy to play against and not impossible to beat either. Because sometimes I play a game players made and it's impossible. Can't make the game. Can't play the game. It's unplayable because it's too hard, right? It's okay to make it hard, but give players ideas how to win the game. Random opportunities to generate points. This means pickups, right? We're going to talk about pickups today. How to create an easy pickup, like a little coin, right? Scoring system, almost exactly the same from assignment 1, 2, and 3. There's nothing different there. It's just a UI, very simple UI. Life counter and health status. I like how life counter and health status. Scoring system. Some people in most modern games there is no score really, right? Score is only for like retro games, like other kind of things. So what do you do instead of a scoring system? Some way of accumulating, points or whatever, or giving putting the person under pressure, like a timer. Like for example, if it's a maze game, you know what? You got 3 minutes to get out of the maze. That's hard. Or 5 minutes. If you made your level 5 minutes, you got 5 minutes to get out of the level, right? That's it. And make a timer that counts down. That can take the place of a scoring system for me, right? Something like that. Scoring systems are okay too. Like for example, if you accumulate wealth or you accumulate stuff, that could be a way of scoring. So things like picking up items that you're going to carry with you that are valuable without really accumulating a score. Just show that you picked up the item. So that's kind of a pickup, right? A game soundtrack is required. Okay, it's not like it's not. And sound effects for everything that you do: explosions, lasers, being hitting other things, jumping, landing, moving. All that stuff is required for anything you do, right? Internal documentation as normal. External documentation, this is your game design document. Please, I know I've had in the past some submissions. If anyone lose marks, a lot of it's on here. External documentation. People forget to do their comments. That's just crazy, man. That's crazy talk. It's 5 marks for this and 11 marks for that. That's 16 marks out of 72. That's nuts. That's like 20% of your mark is internal and external documentation. Please don't forget that. And then combine that with GitHub, right, which is another 6 marks for this one, because there's going to be 2 marks for the first, you know, kind of commits, first set of commits for part 1. There's 2 marks. Second set of commits for part 2, 2 marks. And third set of commits for part 3, 2 marks. So if you don't update GitHub regularly, you're not going to get full marks for this. So it's 6 marks for that. You know, think about the mark spread. 6 marks for that, 11 marks for this. That's 17 marks, plus another 5. That's 21 marks out of 72. 21 out of 72. It's huge. That's like, damn, that's like 30%. Just on that stuff. And people don't like doing this. So this is where the case for the 4th person comes in. I told you, up to 3 people. Yeah, you can probably make a case for the 4th person. Here's the case for the 4th person. A person to manage the presentation. That's their goal. That's their job. Make sure you put the presentation together, external documentation, internal documentation, GitHub, the whole production piece, managing the team, facilitating, being a manager, basically is what you need to do. What was that? A producer, exactly. And that's, I think it's a great way of thinking about that, right? So the 4th person, if you had a 4th person in your team, that's all they would do. You could also have give them people's roles to make it easier for you guys. Give people roles, right? For example, let's say I'm the programmer, you're the artist, she's the designer, you're the producer. That makes sense, right? Now, there's some challenges, right? Because the artist and the programmer kind of have to work hand in hand to produce level 1, 2, 3, right? The artist and the programmer, right? The designer can think about the story and the mechanics, and they can help with those kind of things. And the producer is doing all the other stuff, which is all this other paperwork stuff, right? Which is actually really hard to do, right? Like the presentation, setting up the presentation, organizing meetings, all the management tasks, the administration pieces, who's going to submit their stuff. Remember, for these things, each of these parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, and the final presentation, all of you must submit the exact same stuff, right, to eCentennial, right? Please don't say that only one person submitted. That's not sufficient, because if someone's away, someone's late, missed something, then I'm not going to know who you worked with. Please also specify who your partners are. Yes. You can all use the same GitHub, but I recommend for the 3 parts, either different branches for each of the parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, different branches, if you're good with branches, or different GitHub repositories. It's okay. I'll take GitHub part 1, and it just says GitHub for part 1, this is it. Here's GitHub for part 2. It can even be based on GitHub for part 1. It's got to be a different repository. Why? So that one doesn't clash with the other, right? So I can always go back and look at the first one and say, oh, I see what these guys did for this one, right? And I can also see who contributed to GitHub as well when you guys contribute. That's why GitHub is such a great tool, right? Please do not choose people on your team that you think are not going to work, all right? Caution. If the people aren't going to work, that's an issue, right? Now, that might leave some people in you know, kind of working alone. If you're like, no one wants to work with you, what are you going to do? Please, there's people on Slack that are looking for partners. I'm telling you right now, it's better to work than somebody than with nobody. Give them a job to do, because everybody's going to have to present their stuff at the end. You're going to come up and show me your stuff, tell me what you're doing, right? And you need to know your product inside and out, okay? What about if your partners work really slow? What do? Well, that's why it's a great thing to have a role as a producer or some kind of administrator, whatever you want to call it, okay? Producer is the right word, but we can use administrator as well, right? So example, Ali, let's say he's a good producer, right? And myself and Ashley and Wendell, we're all working together. As an example, we're just taking the guys over here, right? And you know what? Maybe the 4 of us, I'll be the programmer, Ashley's the artist, you know, Wendell is the designer, you're the producer, right? That means Ashley and I got to work really closely together, right? Because we're going to create level 1, level 2, level 3. Wendell's going to take a look at he's going to basically create the game in his mind. He's going to sit there and from a design perspective, what does the game look like? How do I tutorialize the game? How does the player learn the game? What's all the pieces of the game? What's the goal of level 1, level 2, level 3? He's going to be the one that's the mastermind of how the game's going to work, right? And he's going to work with me and Ashley to program it, right? The producer's going to make sure that we're organized. He puts together all the materials, the PowerPoint presentation, the game design document, all have to look like it's your company, right? All that stuff has got to be produced by the end. Guys and girls, if you get by this last crucible, if you will, until the end of semester, these last 3 weeks, if we can get through it, right, you'll have the makings of the first part of your capstone project. Okay, remember, you're going to do a capstone project for school to graduate. This is the way I want you to think about working, okay? Working in teams is critical, and the biggest problem that we have when we work in teams is we don't know how to balance our work. We get together and we don't work. We play, we talk, we chat, we eat. Someone goes away, someone comes back. Organize yourselves, have a plan. Make sure you have an agenda for what you're going to be talking about during your meetings, right? And make it productive. If you got 3 hours, you book 3 hours and you work 3 hours. Don't start talking about other things or working about on other stuff or playing games and when you're working. Play games on your own time. When you're working with your partners, you're working. So have a plan. An example would be this. Let's use that same team that I was talking about. So Ash, Ali, myself, and Wendell, right? We're all together, we're gonna work. And we're gonna look at level 1. And I really like Ashley's level 1, let's say. So Ash's level 1 is the one we're gonna use. Wendell's gotta sit there and analyze, okay, from a design perspective, if that's the way we're gonna go, what elements can I use from Ashley's level 1 to create level 2 and level 3? He's going to probably come up with some wireframes of what it's going to look like for level 2 and level 3, right? And we're going to obviously work with Ashley because Ashley was the mastermind of level 1, right? So Wendell's going to think about, you know, the goal, I'm thinking for the goal for level 2 and level 3, this is what it should be. Guys, there can be discussion, but the final word is Wendell's. Once we start bantering around and we're all designers or we're all programmers or we're all artists, nothing will get done, all right? You've got to accept that. So whatever the word is, you're accepting that. You can trust the other person. If I'm the programmer, I'm the programmer. That's me, right? If I make mistakes, if my code is crappy, if whatever, that's on me. You have to accept my code. Don't sit there, you know what, I think you should do it this way, blah, blah. Once you start getting into that conversation, it's a waste of time, right? Ash is going to take care of modeling, all the artist stuff, the sounds, that she's the artist when it comes to all that stuff, right? Now, there could be like a 6-person sound engineer or whatever, if you have a bigger teams or whatever. But at the end of the day, Ashley takes care of all that stuff. All the assets for the game, it's on Ashley. She's going to pick them. I'm not going to argue with her about what they look like, how they respond, what the sounds are like. I'm just going to accept it. Why? Because we want to come up with a minimal viable product. Minimum viable product is the one we want to come up with, right? For our first submission, which is part 1. Once we have our minimum viable product, right? Then for part 2, okay, what can we tweak for part 2? Ash, you know what? We're having a discussion. We did part 1. You know, can we modify this and that for? Yeah, okay, no problem. I'll add them in. So Ash is going to go hunt to get some other, you know, models or sounds or whatever. You know, once Wendell saw part 1, and now he's got some extra ideas for mechanics for part 2 and part 3 that he's going to add in. And he sits there and goes, okay, you know what? I figured something out. I'm going to add this. Here's the update for my part, right? And then, you know, Ali, he's going to sit there and from a productivity perspective, he's going to organize the whole thing. Here's the plan for what we're doing today, right? I'm giving you just one pattern on how to work. And I'm going to produce also an alternative pattern. Here's the alternative pattern on how to do this project, right? There are 2 programmer artists in your team, 2. And they do pair programming, right? So they sit next to each other. And they hunt for assets and do the programming next to each other. Sometimes it's better because it cuts down on debugging, right, and testing. Because there's 2 artists, programmers sitting next to each other, right? The designer, and if you're in a small team, the designer and the producer, it's one person. So let's say we don't have a 4th person. We only have 3 people on our team. The designer producer does all that, all the other stuff. He thinks about mechanics. He works with the programmer and artist to get this done. But the programmer and artist, all they think about is assets and how to implement what the designer is talking about. Guys, if you don't separate concerns like this, you'll never get it done. You've got 3 weeks, right? So I don't know what it's going to be like. How you work is up to you. right? That's your story, right? I'm not going to mess around with your logistics about how you're going to work with the other people, right? I'm just recommending that these are some of the things that you can do to make things work. None of these things may be the right balance for you, but you've got to find the right balance for your team, right? You've got to work with your team, and part of it is team building and team forming and all that stuff that happens in organizational behavior, right? But the thing for you guys to think about is you got to start now. There is no time to wait. So today, after we take a short break, I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to talk about stuff. If you're working with people that are in this section right now, it's a great opportunity to get together with them and start chatting about, you know, what you're going to do, what your thoughts are. And you should have already been thinking about this anyway, because I've been talking about Final Project now for weeks. Okay? So it's not like we haven't been talking about it. Questions about your final project and your presentation? This is the time. I know it sounds like a lot of stuff. All I've done, remember, at the end of the day, if you think about the requirements for part 1 and part 2, you kind of have some of it already, right? That's why it looks big, but it's not that big, right? Part 1, you already have. So you should have level 1 right now, pretty much. With some minor tweaks and your game design document and who's working on the project, your part 1 is not that difficult. That's team forming stuff. That's like you coming together and assigning roles, who's doing what. This is my original. We're using Wendell's part 1 from his 3D game because we really like it. This is the game, right? Part 2, you kind of almost have this in the bag too, if you think about it, because part 2 is like an extension of part 1 and part, it's kind of taking the same things. That's the hardest part 2 for me, because you're making new stuff there. Part 2, right? That's due in a couple weeks from now. Part 3, that's just the instruction screen and game. That's like finishing touches. That's easier. So it's not like you don't have anything right now. You have stuff to work with. That's why the project is doable. And that's why I'm telling you, please do not try and do something brand new unless you really are tight with your team and you have a really good concept. I'm going to say no. And again, one more thing. 2 things I don't want to see, like I said, is no role-playing games and no puzzle games, okay? Because role-playing games and puzzle games will put you into a black hole and I'll never see you again, all right? You're just not going to finish, okay? No more questions? Let's take a short break. Yeah, sorry, yeah?
It is a 2D game.
2D game. Again, if you have, you can, so the question is it a 2D game? Okay, of course it is. Because remember, it's either assignment 1 is a 2D game. You can use assignment 1. Assignment 2 is a 2D game. You can use assignment 2, right? Either assignment 1 or assignment 2 you can use to build your final project, right? But I don't want to see your assignment 1 and his assignment 1 and his assignment 1 to make your final project. That doesn't make any sense for me, right? And I definitely don't want to see your assignment 1, my assignment 2, and his assignment 3. No, no, no. All right? It can't be like that. It has to be either 2D or 3D game. It has to have a theme to it. There's got to be a reason why you're doing it. And I want you to see this as an opportunity for you to create a portfolio piece for your game, right? So far, you've had 3 games you've made. This is the 4th one, and this is the one that's going to kind of put together all the things that you've done for assignment 1, 2, and 3. Any other questions? All right, let's take a short break. And when we come back from break, for the people who are not here in class, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of time just kind of talking with everybody about what their plan is, the people who are physically here as partners, and that kind of thing. And then we'll get right into doing some animation. We're going to get into doing Blender right away. So be prepared for the people at home, launch Blender, because we're going to build our own coin asset and do some animation, keyframe animation in Blender. We're going to talk about that today, okay? Let's do that after the short break.